The feminism movement didn't unite women, it split women.
I feel totally the opposite.
Listen, 50% of young women don't want to have children. They're really preoccupied with making money and materialism.
But we're still looking at a society that is increasingly telling women where they could be better.
But sometimes feminism expects women to be prioritised, and both sexes want the privileges without the responsibilities.
Can I just add, we are producing women and men who are and I'll tell you what I mean by that. It'll be an interesting discussion. We're joined by...
It was absolutely not an interesting discussion. Actually, very, very far from being an interesting discussion. Hi everyone, welcome back to Themis and Thought. Grab your coffee, water, tea, whatever you're drinking, go and get that. Today we're going to be talking about feminism, whether or not it went too far. Was the sexual revolution good or bad? Before we do, here's Stephen. This is Stephen. Stephen is not the first person you think about. It's not the first name that comes up when you think about the Manosphere at all. Just look at him. What do you think about? What do you think of when you see him? Tell me, write it in the comments. What do you think of when you see him? He, for a lot of people, represents the quintessential good guy. Not angry, well-spoken, sort of slightly nerdy, a kind of welcoming spirit. He is a nice young man. Regardless of his age, his actual age, we all kind of look at him and say, that looks like a nice young man. His branding is really, really good. I think one glance at him and you can tell his entire brand, what he wants you to think about him. It is easy for him to have you drop your guard and you get pulled into his world. You agree with him. At least you think you agree with him. He's not hateful. He doesn't hate women. He doesn't drag women. He is, in a lot of ways, better than other guys. And when I say better than other guys, I do mean, in fact, that I think you would think that he is the educated lame. This is the conception of him online, and he works to promote it. Now, when I say he's the educated lame, I'm talking about him being the educated lame in terms of presentation, how he shows up, and not necessarily in terms of substance. No shade at all, but I'm just talking about the aura. If he's hosting a debate, and the title of the debate is The Sad Truth About Modern Feminism. The word modern should stick out like a sore thumb to everyone watching. Modern women, modern feminism, modern mothers. We hear that rhetoric a lot in the Manosphere, but we'll get that. Your ear should perk up when the word modern is thrown in front of anything having to do with women. But he titles it The Sad Truth About Feminism. What is that truth? What is the truth about feminism that he thinks is sad? You're too slow. If you wanted to give your example and explain it, too slow. The title of the video was updated and now it is feminism creating lonely, broken, sexless men? Is feminism creating lonely, single, sexless men? Period. Now, this is a title, right? I have so many questions regarding this prompt. The main question I have about and regarding the prompt about whether or not feminism is creating single, lonely, sexless men is how and who cares? I mean, sex is not a birthright. As a man, sex is not your birthright. But I go too far. Let's continue. In this video, I will argue that Stephen is anti-feminist. I will also argue that Stephen is Manosphere light. I think that he is anti-women's right and he's pro the traditional patriarchal values to some extent, and that extent is where it disenfranchises women. That is going to be my overarching argument. for this video. This will be a 4-part series where I will take each individual person and create a video for them extracting what they did in the debate and speaking specifically to their position. I'm going to start with Stephen. This video will be Stephen, who said he is the moderator. And my argument, again, is very clear. Stephen's good guy persona, I believe, is a facade, a mirage to hide something that lies deeper, that is more sinister. While women's rights are being stripped away, white supremacists are taking over the government and running amok, Stephen is hosting a debate trying to figure out whether or not women have too many rights, too much freedom. I think that is insane. I think the setup for the debate is absolutely bizarre. Stephen, along with 2 of his lady friends, who will have each their own videos, are going to make the argument and attempt to make the argument that women have too much freedom in today's society, and that the sexual liberation movement was bad for women. Stephen, too cowardly to make the argument himself, drive the point home himself, is letting these 2 other women do his job for him. I am reviewing this because it comes at a very specific time in history. When we think about the administration and what is happening, I'm reviewing this because the notion that women can become happier if only they gave up more of their rights, if they give in to patriarchal values and they became mothers and more caring about being at home and not plugged into the capitalistic system, is somehow freedom and will make them happy. I think it's absurd, and it is something that needs to be pushed back against, and I'm going to start it now. I will also add that it is important that you do not let an accent, whether that is my own or a British accent, lull you into anything that will have you subjugated in a system that already deprioritizes who you are, what you want, and general needs for you as a woman. So now, with that out of the way, let me go ahead and introduce the ladies, right? We're going to get into the ladies, just an introduction to who they are, and then we will only use their voices from here on to help us understand what Stephen's position is. Again, because all of them, hopefully, if I can continue to do this, will get their own video. All right, so let's get the intro together.
Louise, what is your professional background and what do I need to understand and know about your experiences that feed into your perspective on this subject?
So my professional background, I'm a journalist. I write about ideas for a living. I don't have like a political agenda. I just write and say things that I think are true. In terms of how I arrived at some of my views on what we're going to talk about today, sexual revolution, I think I was raised with a lot of the assumptions around the sexual revolution, which are sort of like the water that we swim in now culturally. After I left university, I worked in a rape crisis centre, which was quite formative for me in that I saw some of the ways in which some of the feminist theory that I had learnt at university didn't quite map onto reality.
We'll talk about all of that today. Going clockwise, then Erica, same question to you about your background and the work that's fed into the perspective you have.
I'm a psychoanalyst in private practice. I'm an author. I write books about parenting, and the book I'm probably most well known for is my book Being There, and it's basically about the neuroscience of attachment, or the importance of mothers in the first 3 years of a child's life to create emotional security, which lays down the foundation for mental health in the future. And so from my perspective, I guess the conversation we're going to have, I should say right off the bat, I consider myself a feminist, but I consider myself a term that I like better and that my community uses, the people that I work with, and which is I consider myself a maternal feminist. Basically, there was a school of thought called maternal feminism, which really elevated women in their work as mothers and really talked about it as very important work. And so I'm not an anti-feminist, and I'm certainly for women to have choice. So it'll be an interesting discussion. I guess you could say I'm more of a centrist on this topic. As Louise said, there are parts of feminism that I think really helped women, and there are parts that really did a lot of harm to children.
And lastly, Deborah.
Yes.
Same question to you.
So I am best known as the host of the Guilty Feminist podcast, and I started that podcast to learn about feminism. And I have since researched a lot. I wrote a book called The Guilty Feminist. I've just written a book called 6 Conversations We're Scared to Have, which does also challenge some of the directions that we've gone, but more in about how combative we've become as progressive people to each other, and how difficult it is to talk to people on the right now, and how we need to get back in rooms and we need to be having difficult discussions like this. So it's interesting what Louise says about being raised in a progressive household, but then being disillusioned and thinking that there's some ways in which life was better before the sexual revolution. First of all, agency. I think agency is so important. So agency is just the ability to go around and choose what you do moment to moment. And autonomy is, can I decide what my life looks like, the shape of my life? What choices do I have? And emotional freedom is the third one, and I don't think the sexual revolution did give us emotional freedom, because I think we're still sitting in a lot of guilt as women as to, like, if I'm at work, I should be at home with my children. If I'm at home with my children, am I providing for them financially well enough, or am I going to have a career when I go back to work? If I'm doing both of those things very well, am I a good enough daughter, friend? Am I running a half marathon for charity? Like, we are in a stage of such guilt. That's why my show and one of my books is called The Guilty Feminist, because I felt that feminism had become another thing to feel guilty about. And so anything to me that engenders more shame in women or more guilt in women, or takes their autonomy away, even emotionally, for me, I would like to move far away from that.
I know when it comes to Stephen, it's hard to metabolize what I'm about to say. It's hard to see him as anti-woman. He doesn't seem to have the same kind of vitriol in terms of rhetoric as the other men online. So it is hard to say that he hates women. I don't know that he hates women, but I do hope that women who are watching, when someone is saying you have too much freedom, wanting women to have less rights, hopefully does not feel like love. So while I can say he hates women, I don't know that I can say he loves women if he wants you to have less rights. Maybe he loves a specific kind of subjugated women. Look, let's continue. While Bell Hooks was out here talking about loving men and letting them rest and self-actualize and helping them fight against patriarchy, men were doubling down, saying that they wanted women to be more subjugated and have less rights. It is an interesting phenomena to adhere to the Hooksian perspective, to think that you should love and care for men and let them rest, and time away from work when they are unemployed should be treated as moments for them to self-actualize, when they are intentionally engaging systemically to disenfranchise women. Just putting that out there, because yeah, we're going to always be talking about bell hooks. So the claim I'm making is that Stephen, the host, the moderator, wants women to have less rights. Because he's the interviewer, because he's the moderator, it's difficult, I think, for a lot of people to see or even accept that he too has an agenda. We think the moderator isn't in the argument, they are facilitating the debate. This is not true. Stephen is the one who titles the video. Stephen is the one that asks the questions during the debate. Stephen is the one who put the thumbnail up. He's the one that frames and even comes up with the idea to have the debate on his platform at this very moment. The person who he pushes back against the most is the feminist, the person arguing for women's rights and for women to be appreciated and be seen as fully agentic beings. That's the one that Stephen is pushing back throughout this video. At no other point, to no other person, does he, Stephen, push back against any of the other women who call themselves maternal feminists. The argument you will see him making as we go through his pushback and his moderating skills, which are deeply underdeveloped, is that feminism has gone too far and women are too free. That is fundamentally Stephen's argument. Because Stephen is the good guy, he doesn't outright say women shouldn't have choices. Rather, he reframes this in a question, sort of, that I'll play for you in a moment. And he makes the argument that women with choices, feminists, are ruining the world. So what do you do about those women? Do you let them continue to ruin the world because they have choices? Or is the logical next step to remove their rights? I don't know, maybe you should go ask Stephen. It is interesting though, that he and the maternal feminists anti-feminist women who are there with him, two of them, they don't engage with capitalism, wealth inequality, poverty, and not even patriarchy. They blame feminism for the contemporary society, why men cannot have women and provide, and why there are fewer children. Again, nothing about wealth inequality or the government inability to care for children or help families care for children. None of that. Nope, it's all feminism. No response to whether women should have sexual freedom, right? This is going to be a question that is posed and no one is responding to it, which I find fascinating. Just notes on how poorly women have behaved with the freedom. So when Red Jacket, I think Deborah is her name, asked about what we should be doing about women with freedom, since you all are arguing that they shouldn't have freedom, are you saying they should restrict those freedoms? And if so, how? Nothing. Not going to engage with that. Got it. I do want us, before we dive into this video, to really consider the question and let me know in the chat if you agree that women have too much freedom. It is interesting to hear that women have too much freedom in a political climate where Roe v. Wade was overturned, when Project 2025 is being effectuated, which include the possibility that no-fault divorce would be removed, and ideas around the family and voting and each family only getting one vote in America. Like, it's not a reality yet, but it's something that is on the table now, and the Overton window has moved and shifted so conservatively that I am actually surprised that anyone would be having a conversation about women having too much freedom. I want to also point out that the structure of the debate is 3v1. It is the two anti-feminists, the host with anti-feminist against a feminist. That is the structure of the debate. Anyone trying to add anything else about nuance and who has what position and it's not that cut and dry is lying to you. It is a 3v1, 3 anti-feminists against a feminist. I don't know if she knew that is what she was being brought there for. I hope she knew. She did okay, but I will address her in her own video. But this was a pile-on. It was a dog pile on the feminist, which I also think is agenda setting. And the host is so biased that the two people on his side isn't enough to beat the feminist, and he jumps in debating the feminist. I think that's terrible. I think that's terrible moderating, and I don't know how he didn't realize he needed to balance it out. At least have two feminists against two anti-feminists or maternal feminists. The reason we're having this debate is that Stephen is too weak to make the argument that women have too much freedom. So instead of him making the argument himself, he got two of his anti-feminist friends, maternal feminists, to come and debate a feminist to push his narrative because he didn't want to do it on his own. He didn't want to be seen as part of the Manosphere, and he's going to, at some point, pretend that he does not know what the Manosphere is, which is laughable. He's going to say that he didn't know what the Manosphere was, and that he had to Google what the Manosphere was. Let that sink in. This man, mind you, have interviewed a bunch of men who were in the Manosphere or Manosphere adjacent, but he wants us to believe that he is hosting a debate about feminism going too far, and he talks about men and women in relationships, but he does not know what the Manosphere was. He did not see adolescence at all. Sure, Stephen. Sure. So Stephen is seemingly more conservative, and he is sort of pro-traditionalist view and pro-patriarchy, and he believes in the sort of biological necessity of women to behave one way and men to behave another. Now, that out of the way, all the intro up front, let's get into this video. And again, we're only focusing on Stephen. So I apologize if you feel like context is going to be missing. I will try to add as much of it as I can. But we are going to extract what Stephen did throughout this video for him in this video. And then we'll do the same for every other person, because I want to give them their own video and their own time to shine. I want to give them the spotlight. The women did their intro, and now Stephen, it's time for him to moderate. He's going to kick things off by asking about the sexual revolution and whether or not it was a good or a bad thing. Let's go. Let's hear it.
So autonomy, emotional freedom, and agency. I also want to touch on the word guilt as well, because I remember that being pertinent to our conversation. But if I reflect on those three words, Louise, autonomy, emotional freedom, and agency as the byproduct of the sexual revolution, would you agree with that?
Yes and no. So I think that, can I give an example that is like quite dark?
No, you can't. When you get your video, you'll get to give the example when you get your video. However, asking about the sexual revolution and whether or not autonomy and all of that was a product of strange, instead of, I don't know, going to define what the sexual revolution is and what feminism is, in fact, define these things and then work from the definition. Stephen is microing what Deborah, the lady in the red jacket, the feminist, had to say. Her response about what it means to her, what feminism and the sexual revolution means to her, is personal to her, and maybe it is applicable broadly, but as the host, why not come up with a working definition if you're going to ask people, anti-feminists, to push back against feminist ideology? Why not present the feminist ideologies? Now, Louise, who just came up, their discussion on freedom is complete trash. And I do want to get into it, but we're not there yet. I'm only here to talk about Stephen, but I promise you, we'll get to this idea that you are not happy with freedom, and a lot of people might not want freedom and they want to be slaves. Sure, fine, that's cute, but you're talking about women. And whether or not women want the ability to choose their sexual partners and how many sexual partners they want to have and can have.
Just to add to that before you jump in there, despite the general decline in sex, especially amongst younger people, societal acceptance of casual sex has grown quite rapidly. In the UK, approval of casual sex rose from just 10% in 1999 to 42% in 2022.
The hookup culture.
Yeah.
So when you say rules and structure, Erica, I'm really interested in that turn of phrase, because of course children need rules and structure, but women aren't children.
Well, we're all children. Men are children too. From a psychoanalyst perspective, there's a child in everyone.
Of course.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we'll get to the psychoanalyst in a minute, because, so if you notice something here, it is good, by the way, to introduce stats. Stats are amazing, they're useful, and they should be introduced to either bolster an argument or to refute an argument, and I do like the use of stat. The problem is, at no point during this debate, 0 points, at no point during this debate does Stephen introduce stats that is beneficial to the feminist argument. He was very quick just now to help Erica in pointing out stats regarding hookup culture rising from 10% to 30% or 40%. I don't care. What about it? Did the sexual revolution go too far? Absolutely not. If you think it did, make your argument that it did. Should people not hook up? Okay, you don't think people should be able to hook up. Actually, you don't think women should be able to hook up. Cool. How are you gonna stop them? Are you going to make it illegal? Are you going to strip women's rights further? Why did Stephen introduce this position? Why did he introduce this stat? And if you think, oh, it's just kind of meaningless, he's just trying to put forward real statistics about what is happening to women and the fact that they are hooking up more. Why? There is a why. He does not explicitly make the argument. He let the women make the argument for him. All the women except Deborah. And it's interesting that in preparing to moderate the debate, he only found stat and only engaged with stats and only carried forward stats that were anti-feminist. Nothing about the stats regarding women prior to the sexual revolution and second wave feminism. None of that. Just all the bad stats. And that women are hooking up more, I don't know that that's necessarily a bad thing, even though young people are having less and less sex today. But I digress. Let's continue, because this is where we start to get a peek behind the curtain into his bias, and the bias in research, the bias in presentation of research, and the complete absence of any research that counters his position. I do think is important to note, because it undermines any neutrality he wants to pretend he has, or any objectivity that he thinks he has. He's biased, he knows he's biased, and he's leaning very heavily into his bias to prove a point. By the end of this video, you can tell me if you think I'm wrong, and you can tell me what you think he's actually trying to do. Maybe you think he's just a genuine guy who's doing his best to facilitate a conversation. All right.
Self, and maybe my career is more important to me, or fulfilling, or my friendships, or my desire for travel. I love that we have options. I want the women watching this to appreciate all the options that they have. All the options that they have. If they want to be single and they want to hook up, if they're looking, but in the meantime having that sexual freedom, I want them to have it all. But if what they want is this monogamy that you're talking about, to find the love of their life and settle down and have 2 children, or whatever they want, I want them to have that too.
Deborah, can I ask, do you think that there is a cost to hookup culture and casual sex in regards to the implications it has on women, as Erica was implying, psychologically? And is that more adverse in women than men?
I think human beings...
I know you all want to hear the answer. It doesn't matter. That question is not a question. That question is a position. And this is what he believes. It would be a good pushback if he would provide the kind of pushback to the other group. He does not at all. This is his position. He's very good at pushing back against the feminists. By good, I don't actually mean substantively. He's providing rigorous analysis through questions. No, that's not what I mean. I mean, his position is so easy to pick up on because of the way he engages with the feminists versus the maternal feminists. And that's what I'm talking about. He's not just asking a question. He's stating his position. Deborah is explaining why women having choices is important and why it's meaningful for women to have choices, even when it comes to hookup culture, regardless of your moral values around hooking up. He doesn't engage with this. He just kind of dismisses it and say, are we harming women by allowing them to have hookup culture, as if we are the ones telling women to hook up. Like, how do we prevent women from hooking up? I mean, men can, in fact, say, we are not going to hook up with you women. Men could come together and say, you know what, we're going to protect women by not hooking up with women. Don't you his question about whether or not she thinks hookup culture damages women is so irrelevant and meaningless also, because yes, anything in excess is going to probably cause problems, right? And we hope that young people, when they engage, they can take the proper precautions to, keep themselves safe. That's not just for young women, that's also for young men, right? And then you have to ask yourself, what is this damage, right? In my Jordan Peterson bag, what is damage? What is woman? But even if we should concede that hooking up damages women, how do we stop women from hooking up? And would we want to stop women from hooking up? Would we want to prevent them? I can see a world in which we create a society that doesn't allow for hooking up, but it feels like we're going to attempt to shame women into not hooking up. And I think that is a terrible idea. It has not worked, and I don't think it will work. The funny thing, though, is that the title, that feminism is creating single lonely men and sexless men, the title, and in the context of a hookup culture, the title seems to suggest that this man, Stephen, doesn't actually care about women, but about men. And the way he can advocate for men is to pretend that he cares about women. Because why is the title about men if this is about feminism and how hard it is for women? I do find that fascinating, though to be fair, he did update the title and thumbnail 1,000,001 times. Apparently that's the thing you need to be doing on YouTube for the algorithm. But it is interesting to hear him opine about how harmful feminism and the sexual revolution and hookup culture is to women when the title is about men, and it doesn't seem that he cares about women. To care about women is to not want to restrict them insofar as their agency and their ability to make choices for themselves.
Can suffer from too much choice. Like, we know that if you put 800 varieties of jam out on a supermarket shelf, people will buy less jam than if you put out 8, because they get confused and they just think, oh God, I don't know, none of it then, and they walk away. I think the fact that we have young people sitting in a bar on a Hinge date, and while that person goes to the bar, they're like, what else is out there? I think that's bad for human beings. I think that is bad for women, for men, for non-binary people. That's bad for everybody.
But this sort of sacredness, Erica was alluding to a sacredness of sex itself.
Yes, I think that is not a thing, that we are somehow finding women find sex more sacred than men.
But I didn't say that women find it. I think it's sacred for men and women, but
yeah. So you were speaking to sort of sacredness to it. And I know, Louise, in your work, you've talked about how there's different implications for men and women as it relates to casual sex.
So I think that hookup culture basically is better suited to the average preferences.
I don't care what this woman got to say right now. What I do care about is I would tell him to get out of my face. If you think sex is secret, then you think sex is secret. By the way, I hate the fact that Erica comes in, this is the anti-feminist or maternal feminist. She comes in and she's saying, oh, I am not saying that men or women find it more or less secret. I'm saying they both. She's lying. We'll get back to this, and there is this kind of biological imperative for women to be more protective around sex, and she's going to really lean into this. But we'll do that in her video. This is still about Stephen. Stephen is pushing the argument that women are predisposed to be attached, and because they are predisposed to being attached after sex, that their rights should be stripped away in order to protect them from their own attachment, because they don't know how to make decisions for themselves. And hookup culture is damaging women who should find sex secret. That is his position here. Again, he doesn't say this overtly. He makes a question and then leans on Louise and Erica to make his argument for him against Deborah.
I don't recommend the other thing either, which is don't have sex with anyone until you're prepared at least to marry them.
I've got a graph here that somewhat dovetails into this conversation about when you should have sex and also marriage as a subject. And it shows that from in 1970, roughly women would get married at about 21 years old. And now, this graph will be on the screen, it's about 30. Men used to get married at around 23 years old, and now it's just over 30, which is a pretty crazy climb. So it feels to me if the sexual revolution took place in around this era where we see this rapid climb, maybe the two are somewhat interlinked, i.e. the age in which we'd be getting married or having sex under Louise's, potential advice that it's with men.
It's because of the pill. That's why that.
Ignore Louise, we'll get to Louise in our own video. But note the question. This man pulled up a graph, and yes, we're doing all of his question and interruption because he only interrupts Deborah, he only drags the feminist, he only has position against the feminists, and I think that is important. Feminism, in his mind, caused marriage to happen later and later and later. Mind you, the research does indicate that marrying later is better because those marriages tend to last longer. He's trying to argue that there's a causal connection. He doesn't want to outright say it, so he does this kind of, oh, at first glance, we can look at this chart and we can see that they're happening together. No, we can't. Make your argument. Make your argument, or have one of the women that you brought on to make your argument for you, make the argument for you, because absolutely not. People are getting married later and later. What about it? He's saying people are getting married later and later and later. What about it? If you're not about to make your argument, what should we do about it? Marriages are more successful when people who get married wait until they know who they are and what they want and find the partner that fits their ideal life and then get married. Jumping into a marriage with the first person you sleep with as a teenager or in undergrad uni is not the best setup for a good, lasting marriage. Asking whether or not freedom truly helps women is degenerate. Like, we can agree with that, right? Like, asking if women having freedom is truly helpful to women, which is what is underpinning all of his questions thus far, is degenerate. We can agree that that is degenerate, right? This man, I won't put this on, but he even provided research that says women feel worse after sex. And I'm like, oh, okay. They can, like, women can choose to either have or not have sex, but what do you want us to restrict? Do you want us to restrict women's access to sex? If so, how? Mind you, nothing is engaged. When he says women tend to feel worse after sex, nothing is explained about gender roles, socialization, slut shaming, and just general shaming of women and the kind of puritanical approach we take to sex. Like, we have socialized women to not feel good about engaging in sex, even thinking that women's pleasure when it comes to sex doesn't matter. We don't actually talk about pleasure in sex when it comes to women. Women are now at the forefront, rappers usually, at the forefront of talking about their own satisfaction when it comes to intercourse. Like, that's not a thing that we engage with as a general matter. Even if we concede that sex was bad for women, which I'm not willing to concede, even if we did that, what would you want us to do about it? And you guys are gonna be really sick of me asking, and what about it? Because essentially, this video can be titled, and what about it? If sex is bad for women, and women want to have sex, what do you want to do about women wanting to have sex? You want them to not have sex? Because again, your title is talking about the lonely man epidemic, the men unaliving themselves, and to pretend like you care about women, and this is not just a scheme that Stephen set up to come to us with the foolishness to protect men is absolutely wild. Erica has 2 sons. I think Louise has sons. Erica is a boy mom. Remember that. When it comes to her video specifically, we're gonna get in. This will be the most boring video of the 4 that I'm creating. Because I promise you, when it comes to Louise and Erica, oh girl, it's going down. Basement.
Friday the 13th, guess who's playing Jason? Tuck yourself in, you better hold on to your teddy. It's not me and Ellen streaming, guess who's playing Freddy? Chef cooking for me. They say my shoe game crazy, the mental asylum looking for me. You are rookie to me. Yeah, no, we're gonna try. Absolutely, we're gonna do it.
All right. Instead of continue in this kind of linear fashion, I'm gonna skip ahead because I do think I need to prove some things up front. Oh, well, we're very deep in the video right now, but I want you all to hear what Stephen said about who gonna raise his kids. The feminists asked Stephen a question because these two, the anti-feminists were talking about women really want to be at home and they just don't want to be at work or whatever, right? Fine, I'm not going to argue against them yet. Their video is coming. So the feminists turn to Stephen and she goes, who gonna raise your kids? She didn't say it like that, but essentially she said, who's gonna raise them kids? Your kids specifically, you, Stephen. Would you like to take off the raise? Stephen said, absolutely not. Who is going to raise Stephen's children? He is rich, but who gonna raise them? Let's hear it.
Whatever it is.
Can I ask you a question, Stephen?
Go ahead.
Would you take a 3-year career break? Would you be able to do that?
Would I be able to take a 3-year?
Emotionally, mentally?
So I would be, it's possible, but would that be my choice? No. It's obviously possible because I have the means to, so I'm a different person, I'm a slightly more privileged person to ask. But would I want to take 3 years off my career, stop doing this, to solely raise children? I would not want to.
You would struggle. And the thing is, men are...
She's going to explain the feminist, red jacket, period girl, eat down. But she's going to explain that women are expected to do it and men aren't going to be chastised. No one is going to feel bad when a man said he's not going to take time off his work to raise children. But when a woman says this, they're going to be upset. I'll talk about that more in her video because I thought that was an excellent point. But to Stephen, girl, who going to raise your kids? Who you expect to take off? Because you don't like daycare. You don't want to send them to daycare. So the woman, essentially the woman has to stay at home and raise Stephen's children and her children. The issue isn't whether or not that woman wants to do it, because Stephen hopefully can go out and go find a traditional woman who wants to do that thing. In this moment, Stephen's idea about what men should do and acceptable for him versus what women should do and acceptable for whichever woman he chooses, it comes out. Now, we can limit it and say, well, maybe he's not talking generally about women generally and men generally. He's talking about himself and the life that he wants and what he wants from the woman he chooses and the woman that chooses him, right? That could be argued only if he didn't have all the pushback in the world for the feminists and pulling up stats about how women are harmed by these kinds of culture that they have freedom in, and women with too much freedom is not good for society, essentially is his argument. But let's go to where Stephen pretends to not know what the manosphere is. And this is why I find it very odd, because it does feel disingenuous for a man who has a podcast that he does and engages in the conversation he does for years to not know what the manosphere is. So this is Stephen pretending to not know what the manosphere is.
Manosphere talk. I found this graph as well, which just shows the sort of explosion in people searching trad wife, which means traditional wife.
Yeah.
And it seems from 2024, there's been this real explosion in people searching for this trend. And you said something a second ago, Erica, about young boys in particular being more vulnerable, I think were your words, than the young girls that you're seeing.
Yeah.
So how do these ideas come together to and also link in and parlay into this word manosphere? Because this subject of manosphere has been at the very forefront of conversation.
Everything's a little out of balance. Everything's a little
out of balance. Girl, we don't care. I will go back to her again in her own... I'll go back to her in her own video. But Stephen's sitting up there talking about men are having it harder. Yeah, but how is that feminism's fault and not capitalism, patriarchy, and all the other archies that exist out there? How is feminism to be blamed for this? So women getting rights, women self-actualizing, women having freedom and choice is somehow harmful to men? How? I actually do need the how. Like, they don't tell us how this is harmful to men. By the way, this is where Stephen's bread and butter is in his mind. This is something that I do actually believe he's passionate about, and he's hiding his concern for men under some idea about concern for women. This is my belief. This is my opinion. This is my take. I think the reason he pretends to not know what the manosphere is because he is speaking the manosphere language, and he does not want it to seem like he got his argument in the way presented to us as questions to the participant in the debate. I don't think he wants us to know he got it from the manosphere, so the way he distanced himself from the manosphere is to feign ignorance. That is my opinion. I think he is pretending to be ignorant of the manosphere so that the ideas he's putting forward in the form of questions do not seem to come from the manosphere, which they are. He is. Again, I want to know how feminism made young boys vulnerable. That's the question I want him to answer. This lady is going to go on to describe patriarchy. Actually, we have to. We'll play this again on her part, but to engage with Stephen's lack of moderating skills, I will let Erica speak, and then we'll see that Stephen does absolutely nothing to push back against her when she said one of the most idiotic statements in the debate. Let's hear it.
Said something a second ago, Erica, about young boys in particular being more vulnerable, I think were your words, than the young girls that you're seeing.
Yeah.
So how do these ideas come together to and also link in and parlay into this word manosphere? Because this subject of manosphere has been at the very forefront of conversation.
Everything's a little out of balance. Everything's a little out of whack. So it was out of whack in the 50s. And so we fixed it. And now it's out of whack in a different way. We went from the patriarchy of men dominating women to now we have the patriarchy of women dominating men. I mean, what we need to do is not go back, but come to the middle. We need to, it just makes common sense.
How are we dominating men, though?
All right. Now, let's be very clear. Stephen doesn't push back. The first question I have for Erica itself is how, and Red Jacket is going to ask, how are women dominating? How are women dominating men? She don't got an answer. She does come up with something, but we'll get there when we get there. I don't think she knows what patriarchy means. Because how do you say we moved from a patriarchy where men are dominating women to a patriarchy where women are dominating men? One, define patriarchy. Yeah, I'm going to need you to define patriarchy, Erica. I'm going to need you to define patriarchy. And the fact that Stephen doesn't jump in to ask to clarify what she means. Does she mean matriarchy? What do you mean a patriarchy of women dominating men? And then two, by what metric are you using to measure domination? Because I need to know what scale you're using to make the argument that women are currently dominating men. In what way? Now, she's going to talk about going to school. Again, trying to figure out how that is dominating. You can also go to school as a man. If you think about it, Stephen can drag Red Jacket, feminist Deborah, at every single turn, but he has no smoke for these people, these other women who are anti-feminist, regardless of whatever nonsense they're spewing. That to me is absurd. Even when they bring up the stats about marriage, Stephen doesn't engage or correct or ask for clarification. Let me play that.
Oh my goodness. 60% of college students are women and graduate students.
That's not us dominating
No,
them.
well, let me finish. Young men are afraid of women and the power they have over them to accuse. No, it's true. In universities, it's a real thing. I know because I have two sons and, there is, again, the correction was necessary.
I'm a boy mom. Of course I anticipate getting peed on every time I change his diaper. I'm a boy mom. Of course I call him my little man.
No, sorry. I can't let it play because I need to give her her own video. If I let this play, I have to engage with it. I can't just let her talk. Let me just explain what happened. Stephen does not engage with Erica or Louise at all. whenever they're saying nonsense, whenever they're engaging in misinterpreting stats, whenever they're lying, whenever they're straight up making stuff up, Stephen does not engage. Stephen only engages with the feminists and pushes back against the feminists. That is the only time he's activated at all. That is what I wanted to show there. Now, you can say this is fair and balanced all you want, but you are lying. I don't care how much a fan of his you are, you're lying. And it's okay to say, I believe that traditional values are important, and for him to say, I believe that women's place is mostly in the home, and then make the argument so you can be dragged and not get women to come up there and do your dirty work while you're sitting on the sideline pretending not to be a part of the fight while throwing punches every chance you get when someone's back is turned. That to me is trash, and it is weak. All right, now that that's out of the way, let's continue.
Needed to course correct in society, absolutely, but we've gone so far. So the men were powerful and the women weren't. So the women said, give us some power. So now the women took the power and now the men feel powerless. You need a system.
The woman took the power. Ew, 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 ew. I want to address this, but I'm having a ton of restraint. Her video might be the best one yet. Her video, me addressing, her name is Erica, I believe. Me addressing Erica will probably be the best in this 4-part series because, ugh.
Society that's balanced. It needs to be balanced. And the idea was that where we wanted to go, and the truth is that all movements often go to extremes. The women's movement, those women had to go to extremes because to change society, you have to do that, right?
So should some women not go to university? Is that what you're saying?
No, but actually, I think there needs to be a balance in society of men and women. If we say that we are going to be like Amazon women and not need men anymore, the truth is that the way it works is that by the research is that women will marry at their educational level or above, and men will marry at their educational level or below. That means that because we have fewer men in college and graduate school, women are not finding partners.
I'm just going to jump in there and talk about a report that came out in 2025, which sent shockwaves across the UK. It was called the Lost Boys Report. I think we might have talked about this in a previous episode, but it was a report by the Centre of Social Justice, which highlighted how many young men are now struggling in school, facing increased mental health problems and lacking positive role models, leaving them lost and isolated. And as a result, they suggested that many of them are turning to what we call the Manosphere. And to give a definition to the Manosphere, because I didn't actually know what it was, the definition I have from Cambridge Dictionary is Manosphere includes websites and discussion groups focused on men's rights, which often oppose feminism in some way. And just to give a sort of a top line look at some of the stats around this, by age 5, 25% of boys in the UK are falling behind in language communication skills compared to just 14% of women. Yeah. At GCSE level, boys' results are on average half a grade lower than girls. The same applies for mental health and wellbeing. Obviously, we know about the suicide rates in young men, with nearly 3.5 times higher than those of young women. Eating disorders have risen as well in young men. And from an employment perspective, as of late 2024, 15.1% of men aged 16 to 24 were not in education, compared to 11% of women, which equates in the UK to about 550,000 men. And lastly, young women are between the age of 16 and 24 now earn nearly 10% more than their male peers, reversing the traditional gender pay gap in this age group. And I could go on and on and on. Specifically, the things that I've kind of not talked about are just how family dynamics have changed. And by age 14, nearly half of firstborn children do not live with both natural parents compared to 1970. And this was really shocking. And I think it really rose an argument which I saw play out in, I saw the Sunday Times do a big piece about it. I saw it on LinkedIn, which is what is going on here? And is this a clue as to why we now have this term manosphere?
It's a reaction. Manosphere.
Absolutely not. All of the stats he just read about how terrible boys are doing have nothing to do with feminism. Please point me to how feminism is causing men to not go to school. Feminism is causing men to be lonely. Men can literally go be friends with other men. Now, there can be an argument that women, through feminism, no longer want to sleep with men for resources. That could be an argument. What about it? The reason boys are turning to the manosphere is not because they're in trouble. They're engaging in some very degenerate conversation over there in the manosphere, and they're hating and disrespecting and dragging women. I am sorry, these maternal feminists, talking to this one poor feminist who is up there trying to convince them of something, don't know what. They are trying to talk about how to help men because one is a boy mom, but they're trying to talk about how to try to help men while men are talking about dragging and disrespecting them. It's feeling very bell hooks. It's giving very much bell hooks. There's not an engagement here in this part of the discussion about capitalism, about the cost of living, about the labor market and how exploitative it is, about patriarchy in the system. In fact, these people are trying, the maternal feminist and Stephen are still trying to uphold patriarchy while blaming feminism for the consequence of patriarchy on the men who cannot live up to their patriarchal roles, men and boys who cannot live up to their patriarchal roles. How do you fix yourself to shift the blame from the system that disenfranchises everyone that's a part of it who is not rich? How do you shift that blame to feminism, which is an ideology that is helping women to get footing in the system that is broken? It could be that men are feeling less important and less useful because the economy shifted from a reliance on physical brute strength to intellect and using one's brain. And I'm going to take this dig. For the logical group, the group that believes that they're predisposed to being more rational and reasonable and maximizing their brain power, for that group to be disenfranchised by a system change towards being rational and reasonable and using one's brain power more, as opposed to their physical body and brute strength, for them to be disenfranchised by that shift in the system should tell you something about the propaganda that men are the logical group. But I won't go there fully. It is nasty work, though.
I want a partner. I want someone that when things are going badly for them, I'm there. When things are going badly for me, they're there for me. Like, I want a partner. I don't want this biological essentialism of he's got to step up and be the provider and the protector. I don't want that.
Deborah, can I ask to that point then, on that partnership? As a man, I still kind of assume that a woman is more likely to choose me if I have more money than her and I can pay the bills and I take care of her. And so I looked into some of the research around that, and there's still an expectation amongst women that their male partner will earn much more than them. And when they did this big, I think it's about 70%, I'll put the right stat on the screen, when they did this big analysis of dating behavior, where they looked at 1.8 million online dating profiles across 20 different countries, if you earned more, so if you had higher income, you are 255% more likely to get an indication of interest on these applications. And so I would love to live in a world where that wasn't the case, but it seems that women are still choosing men that earn much more money. And that expectation of therefore being the provider is so inherent in reproductive success as a man.
There's a reason for that, though. So what we haven't talked about, can we talk
Ignore her. Ignore her. Let's get back to his question. Reproductive success as a man. Aren't broke men having children? Is it the case that only rich men having children? Are most of the children being born into wealthy families where these men are rich? Are most of the children being born globally are being born to poor mothers and fathers? Mind you, his sort of biological essentialism that pops out comes at a time where feminist Red Jacket is saying that she wants a partner. Red Jacket just pointed out that she wants a partner, not a provider, a partner. She says she wants a man who is going to be there for her when she needs him, and she will be there for him when he needs her, right? Now, it is important to note that Stephen absolutely does not push back against anyone else. None of the two anti-feminist or maternal feminist women there gets pushback from Stephen. But every time this red jacket feminist breathes, every time Deborah breathes, Stephen is down her throat. What do you mean? What about this? What about that? Now, it is important to note that he says, as a man, quote, as a man, women are more likely to choose me because of money. That's what he believes. Okay. But a lot of broke men have children and are chosen by women. A lot of homosexual. A lot of women are taking care of men, girl. A lot of women are taking care of men. And let's filter for race and see what we come up with. It's weird that Stephen had the audacity to pull up this New Zealand study to suggest that women are interested in men because of money. I feel like the jokes here write themselves. The jokes here write themselves, and I think it is important to note that because someone might sound intelligent, maybe you assign intellect with an accent, please don't do it because someone sound intelligent doesn't mean they are. Mind you, his own fact check at the bottom of the screen says the absolute opposite of what he's saying here. Look, he says 70% of women want men who make more than them. This is absolutely not what the stat says. That is what he said. If you look at the bottom of the screen from the New Zealand study that he's putting up, the summary that he put up, it says 70% of women think their partner's income is very important. Now, thinking that the income is very important is a very different statement and conclusion than I only date men with more money than I have. What is important? What does important mean? Please tell me you know these two statements aren't the same. One saying 70% of women think their partner's income is very important is different than 70% of women want men who make more than them. Please tell me you understand how those two things are not the same. He does nothing, mind you, with the changing gender dynamics. Women are going to school more, women are being employed more, women are starting to make more money across the board, right? And women are having to date at or beneath their financial and educational level. This is increasingly the case now. Nothing about that. There's nothing about the Pew Research that says 71% of women, right? 71% of women are more focused on kind of the ability of men to protect them and engage with them emotionally. Even since we're doing dating website, which is what he put up, the 2020 Bumble survey had women willing to date. What was it? It was 62% of women are willing to date men who make less than them. And the 2021 census says that around 40% of women are the provider, the primary breadwinner in their marriages. It was specifically marriages. So broke men getting married too, girl. And then when you filter for race, this is upwards of 60% of married black women are the primary bread. When Stephen says men, their mating strategy and success is predicated on them having money, I wish that were the case. I'm sure women would like men with money, but the truth is they're marrying everyday men with no money. So I don't know what Stephen talking about mating success for men. He just literally made that up. He just made it up. His daddy probably broke. He might be rich now. I know nothing about his family, but statistically, girl, it is not looking right. Stephen is wrong because a lot of men without money have children. I actually wish Stephen was correct and men who have children were able to provide for them, but the truth is men with no money are having children every day. So being a provider is not inherent in reproductive success for men. I wish that were the case. I wish that were the case, but it's not. He just literally made it up. And not only did he make this up, this feels like Myron Gaines with an accent. When you listen to him talk about being a provider is inherent in the reproductive success of men, that is a straight up red pill manosphere talking point. I wish that were the case, but they only say this to shame women. They don't actually believe that men should provide for women. Actually, when women talk about wanting a provider man, these women are shamed for this preference. They only say to elevate themselves insofar as what they quote unquote bring to the dusty table, even though they know they bring nothing. And when women demand something, again, they treat them terribly. This, again, is Myron Gaines with an accent and some color. And less color. It doesn't seem like for Stephen the truth matters. The truth for him is whatever his narrative is, and he's about to push it.
For children, and we don't talk about children. We're sitting here, this is the first time we talked about children. We're talking about adults and individuals, and no, children are dependent on us. If you don't have to have children to be happy, but if you are going to bring children into this world, you have a responsibility to those children, and it surpasses any individual desire you may have.
And you're saying the mother should be there in those opening years?
The primary attachment figure, who's usually the mother.
No, it was quick. But you hear him say, so you mean the mother should be there. After Stephen said he would not take off, but someone got to take care of the child, so it would be the woman. So when he said the mother should be there as a question, it is actually a statement. It is his statement for his life. And when he talks about biological imperative and that it is required for men to have money, for women to choose them, then the person making the money is not the same person who's going to be at home taking care of the child, even in his own life. So he is, in fact, making a statement there. Women need to be at home to take care of the children, is what he's saying. It's quick, but he's talking about the place of women and mothers in society. I will discuss more about the place of women in the society when I'm talking about Erica's video, because Erica, girl, absolutely not. We're still on Stephen.
So does that mean that if I'm not home as a mother for those early 3 years, you think there's possible chances that my child might grow up to be somewhat traumatized or have some kind of...
It is not what nature intended for us. And so we have made social changes that are about narcissism and self-orientation.
Ignore her facts about narcissism. Also, I'm not really addressing her, I'm addressing Stephen. Note, there is no pushback here. Remember, Erica initially said the primary caregiver, it doesn't have to be the mother. But then in her follow-up, she's saying the first 3 years of life, it has to be the mother, because if the mother is away, the child is traumatized. This is clearly an issue. It seems conflicting, and this is the time for the host, the moderator, to ask her clarifying questions about her position here. Does it have to be the mother who stays home so the child isn't traumatized? Can the dad do this? Can someone else do this? He doesn't ask any of that. His position is being made by Erica, therefore he's not going to push back at all against any of it. There is no pretense here, mind you. They believe as a mother you should be at home taking care of the child, and whoever should be out there working to provide for you. Now, if you don't have a man to provide, well, Erica gonna come up with a solution for the poor people. We'll get to that when we get to her video. It is interesting, though, it is still very interesting to me that Stephen, even if he does believe Erica and this is his position, he doesn't even pretend to push back. He doesn't pretend to, there's no engagement. His bias is just on full display. Women should be at home. They're talking about what is natural, and they keep going back to what is natural and women is natural. And it's very annoying to me because they're sitting in front of a camera on a table with a microphone recording something and putting it out there for the masses while talking about what is natural. If these men don't get up and go take care of them kids, Go to work if you must and come home and take care of them kids. I don't know what you're talking about. Natural.
What are your thoughts on this, Louise, in terms of the role that feminism has had on mothers and motherhood?
And someone in the trenches.
Yeah.
So
You can go straight to hell, Stephen. You go ask this anti-feminist woman. We'll get to her response. We'll talk about her. And this is a disjointed way to make this video. I just wanted to challenge myself, and I probably will never do something like this again. Instead of going through the debate in part, I just take the people and try to segment it. This is so difficult. Anyway, Stephen asking Louise her thoughts on feminism and the effect on mothers and motherhood is absolutely diabolical. He already knows the answer. He asked the question many times, and he's just really annoying with it. It has no effect on mothers and motherhood. If it did, it only made it better, because now women could go to work and provide, where once they had to rely on government or an abusive man. And so it freed women in a way that made them more emotionally and financially available to their child. Now fight back against that in the comment. For the people who are anti-feminist, let's do it. Let's have a debate. If you want to have a debate, let's do it. I will make up the debate. Put it in the comment if you want to debate me, and we will have a live stream where every single person who claims they want to debate me in good faith, we will debate this. I will debate you. I will debate anyone on this on a live stream, no edits at all. We will go head to head. Let me know in the comments that you want to debate me, and we will do it. Cool, let's do it, because this is actually annoying. Instead of blaming capitalism and the dusty daddy, or even blame patriarchy, he's gonna sit up there talking about he gonna blame feminism for the effects on mother and motherhood. Absolutely not. Go sit somewhere with that foolishness. Let's move on.
you have to acknowledge that there are differences.
Did you say that what was that number you cited? 66% of women would like the opportunity to be able to stay at home.
That's a UK
Yes.
figure.
I
60%
reckon, yeah.
in America, 66% in the UK.
I don't know the numbers on men, but I would guess that it's really low. And that I know that there are other statistics around when fathers aren't earning. That can cause, I mean, it's kind of difficult too, because there are obviously confounding factors. Maybe fathers aren't earning because they are.
So he just brought up that a percentage of women would like to stay home. Yeah, a lot of people would prefer to not have to plug into the capitalist machine and work their fingers to the bone to provide for their family, but we have to do it. And even if women would like at higher rates to be at home with their child, I don't know that you can argue that this is biology. I mean, I'm sure there's some there, but after we shame women and they've been socialized to believe that they need to be the one to take care of their children, be the child boy or girl, then yeah, I would assume that the stats would bear that out. I don't think men who have pride in whatever masculinity and manhood we believe exists would readily admit to wanting to rest. Bell Hook's been trying to tell these men to go rest for the longest of time. And this is like this gender essentialist claim being made over and over again by Stephen in the form of a question. Essentially what Stephen is trying to say is that even women know their place, which is at home taking care of the children, but feminists are pushing women to work. I promise you this. Women aren't out there in the labor market because they think I have to be a good feminist. I would argue that very few women, if any, are out there saying, I have to work because if I don't work, I'm not a good feminist. Most people are just trying to survive in this thing called life. And also men aren't dependable. So even if women were like, you know what, I would love to sit at home and have my man provide. Yeah, well, don't do that because these men aren't dependable. These men aren't dependable long term. And any woman, I think it is wild for a woman to stake her life and her livelihood, her ability to eat on whether a man is attracted to them. That is an insane thing to do. I believe that fully. Now, if you do it and you succeed, good on you. But I think that's an insane thing to do.
Have we got you said something there which links to the next thing I wanted to talk about, which is if we don't correct this in some way, we're not going to have mothers. Mm-hmm. And when we look at the birth rates and the fertility rates,
50% of young women don't want to have children. So,
blah, blah, blah. If we don't correct this, we won't have mothers. Correct what exactly? What is wrong? Why is it wrong? And how do you correct it? And what does correcting it look like? Is it the case that he's making the argument that the thing that is wrong is feminism and women in the workforce? Women need to have more children. And if so, how do you get women to have more children? Do you force them to have children? How do you incentivize women to have more children, Stephen? Because he's talking about we don't have enough children being born. He's going to say this, I don't feel like going through it anymore. It's too late at night now and I have to go edit this and put it out, so I'm not going to find this. But he also says that there's not enough children being born to replace the elder population. And so how do we fix society to make women and people have more children? Look, I think having less children is the goal. Erica is such a liar to me. And I this is allegedly, but this is my interpretation of her. Because she's saying, I don't believe, and we'll talk about it in her video again. She's saying, I don't believe women should have children if they're not suited for it. And being a mother is a job where you have to center the child instead of yourself and remove this narcissistic approach to self-indulgence. She's saying that while also saying we need to have more kids and these women need to have more kids. Agreeing with Stephen, this seems contradictory because these women are saying, you know what, no more kids. I don't want to have a bunch of kids because I'm not suited for this life that Erica talking about, that you shouldn't send them to daycare, you should be at home. And now Stephen coming out here talking about we need to have more kids and how do we correct this? And Erica is trying to tell her how to correct it when I thought Erica was okay with there not being a bunch of kids running around. So y'all just lying. They're hiding the ball. They're hiding their position.
Yeah, I'm interested to see how you all think that the impacts and implications of pornography impact everything we've talked about today, whether it's men, it's women, it's children, etc., and also how that ties into feminism.
I would say there is...
He asked essentially how feminists see pornography, and he's going to try to push this weird argument about whether or not feminists or anti-feminists, they claim they're not anti-feminists, but they're maternal feminists, whether or not feminists should remove pornography, or if they had the power to remove pornography, would they do it, right? It's interesting that he blames in this question sort of feminists for pornography, or at least that feminists are upholding pornography in this weird world of his. I don't understand how he would blame feminists or even have this pornography conversation around feminism when the exploitation of women is a very specifically patriarchal thing and definitely not a feminist thing, and feminism is pushing back against the exploitation of women. The men are the buyers and distributors of pornography by and large. Capitalism is the vehicle for commodification of women's bodies, not feminism, right? And so it does seem underdeveloped, underbaked that he is blaming feminism. And a lot of anti-feminists do this, even in their question. It's very disingenuous, where they will make these very weird claims because a feminist would not take away another woman's right to engage in pornography, right? Because they won't do that. It's somehow blaming them for not wanting to take away another woman's right to engage in the selling of her body in this way, where we sell our bodies in other ways to survive in capitalism. Not to say this is good or bad, but it is weird to then blame feminists for not removing choice when feminism is the giving of choice to women. I think that is a strange way to engage in discourse and questions there. He then moves on, because I don't want to play this part of the video, to ask if he should open door for his partner. And honestly, I would have just told him to go. I would have said, girl, I don't care. If you're a good person, a good human being, I don't care about you thinking it's a good man being chivalrous. I open door for men, I open door for women, I open door for the elder, I open door for kids. If you're behind me, I'm opening the door for you. Like, what do you mean? So I would have said, no, don't do it. Don't open it for her. I think thinking, actually, let me play. I'm going to play sorry, I have to play it because I do think it highlights his bias. So I'm going to play where he asks if he should open the door for women.
So just to make sure I've completed my perspective of how you think about masculinity. So should I be holding the door open for my partner? And should I be paying the bill on the first date?
I think chivalry is great. I think that rejecting chivalry was a mistake.
All right. Should I open the door? Should I pay for my girlfriend on a date? This is an incel question. This is a red pill manosphere, I hate feminism question. It is fundamentally getting at, I want to remove your privilege. If you want to be equal as a woman, feminism, I'm going to show you what feminism is. Should I open the door? Should I pay? Should they pay? Should we go 50-50? Should I be the provider? Should they be the provider? This is a very incel-y way to engage with feminism because it fundamentally undermines the woman and the argument being made about being disenfranchised as a woman, reducing it to what you believe are some very minuscule privileges women get in society, saying you're going to take those away as a threat. It is a threat to women if they continue down this path of feminism is ridiculous because in truth, most of y'all, us, can't pay for these dates. Most of us aren't providers. Most of us don't open the door. And the fact that you are asking if you should open the door, for me, highlights your degeneracy. Like, point blank period. It just shows how degenerate a person you are. If women are talking about their bodily autonomy, right, and what feminism means insofar as pushing forward agency for women, you're going to say, okay, I won't open the door, or should I be paying on the first date? Go get a life. I wanted to include this part, but I don't know if I should include it in Deborah's part, because this video is already way too long. Towards the end of the video, he is locked in a debate with the feminists, just questioning her, hammering her with question after question after question before it ends. She's talking about gender roles and young boys feeling like they could not knit at school. And for some reason, Stephen took that moment to engage in this weird feminist debate instead of just letting her live. The substance of what they're talking about doesn't really matter for this video. It only highlights how deeply invested he is in pushing back against the feminist, where he doesn't push back against the anti-feminist woman he brought on, maternal feminists. And he pushes this idea that there is a neurological difference between men and girls, or boys and girls. But he does this when the feminist, Deborah Red Jacket, is talking about boys not feeling good about knitting in school because of social stigma. I don't know how he made sense in his mind to talk about neurological differences when she's talking about knitting. Actually, let me play it.
Deborah, how do you agree, disagree with that perception?
That's not at all my worldview. I think we should be teaching our children to find their humanity and their empathy, no matter their gender. When I researched my book, 6 Conversations We're Scared to Have, I thought that it was going to show me that the internet, and especially social media, made us less and less empathetic. We think about keyboard warriors and make can't see your face and all that. But what I discovered is, in fact, every single day, social media asks us to be more and more empathetic to fewer and fewer people. And that is a cult. I was in a cult. You have to be very empathetic to the people in it. And the second someone steps outside, they're dead to us. And that is what I see on the internet. I see it I think we're all in a big series of cults. So I see now this rise of young men being told women are dreadful, women have taken our place, which is just, it is not for girls not to go to university to make things more fair for boys. It is for us to nurture our boys, to make sure if they're feeling lost or they're feeling that they can't compete or they're out in the world and they're flailing around, we need to build them up. We do not need to tell girls to step back. That is, we haven't got equality yet. We're nowhere near it, much less pulling ourselves back to make more space for boys at this point. We desperately need to invest in our brothers, in the boys in our community in any way we can. I went into a school and chatted to the boys about gender norms and how they felt about it and what impositions they felt or what random things were weird. And I said to them, what would be weird if a boy did it for no reason? Like there's not, and one of them said knitting. He said, if I brought my knitting to school, he said, not that he knitted, he said everyone would laugh at me. And why? There's no reason for it. And another boy just went, I'd bring knitting in. I wouldn't care.
Are boys and girls fundamentally, biologically, physiologically, neurologically different? And therefore, do they need a different approach? They're hormonally different. We kind of understand that. We all agree with that from birth. So do they need to be raised differently to cater to that difference?
I wouldn't exacerbate it. I would say we all should be, as I said, I want a partner. And I think we should be raising both our girls and our boys and any children that feel that they're neither to aspire to their humanity, to their empathy, to look out for each other. I think exacerbating roles and telling boys you're like this and girls are like that is pushing us further away. And it's pushing us back decades and generations.
Should a man, a young boy, be a provider, a procreator, a protector? Should we instill those values in young boys?
No.
Why?
Because there's this heavy imposition on boys and there's a heavy imposition on girls that their life should look a certain way. And we've got to a point where men can stay home and raise the children, where women can go out and explore new territory, where we see that women are as clever as men, as talented as men, as able to debate as men. Why would we push this back and go, well, girls, it's really more feminine if you do this, and boys, girls will fancy you more if you do this?
So what does like a young man, what should his virtues be? You said empathy and those kinds of things. And then on the chivalry side of things, should I be holding the door open for every woman that walks through one? Should I be paying that bill on the first day?
I think it's lovely when all human beings hold doors open behind them for other human beings. I really disagree that we should not. When we issued Chivalry, what was going on was that there was a period of time where it was like, she's more gentle, she needs help. And it stopped people seeing us as people who could be entrepreneurial CEOs. So women said, look, could you just not do that? Because if you're not holding the door open for any of the guys, then you hold it open for me. They see me as somehow less than sweet, sexualized. So we said no. Now I think, look, honestly, if a man holds the door open for me, that's very nice, whatever. I don't think people see me that way anymore. I don't think it's a big deal anymore. I don't like the idea that you have to pay on the first date. I think, if I've invited you out, I'll pay. If you've invited me out, you'll pay. I mean, you're much richer than me, so probably you should pay, but that's nothing to do with gender, Steve.
Is there not something evolutionary in that, if we look back through our ancestry, that the qualities of fertility are more attractive to men and the qualities of being a provider are more attractive to women? So if I don't sort of invest in becoming a provider as a young man, I'm actually going to do much worse when I get older. According to some of the data we referenced earlier, 250% less women are going to opt for me. So if I don't sort of build a base and become a provider, am I going to be at a disadvantage as a man in the society that we live in? But also, if we look back through our evolutionary history, is that not hard-coded into us?
It makes me feel so sad that boys feel this huge responsibility when we are now at a point when it is evident that you do Dragon's Den, you sit next to Deborah Meaden, who's every bit as good an entrepreneur as you. So why is it your responsibility? Why is it men's responsibility? We can both raise children. We've demonstrated we can both raise children. I've got friends.
That's the society I live in.
But let's reshape it. Raise your children to think differently and reshape it.
Is the society we live in a consequence of our evolutionary survival of the fittest, natural selection, pick a good partner so that you can reproduce past? And you see this in women where I'm watching this dating show called Pop the Balloon, which I love, which has just gone to Netflix. And it's so crazy that so basically Pop the Balloon is 10 men stand in a line with a balloon, or 10 women stand in a line with a balloon, and then a man or woman walks out. So when a woman walks out and she looks at the lineup, she will go down the lineup and pop every balloon of a man that's below 6 feet tall. Just like that. It's crazy. And they'll say, why did you pop his balloon small, short? Why do you pop his balloon short, 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 short? This is just part of...
No, it's so destructive, though. Look, we can talk about evolution, but I've seen David Attenborough shows where our shared ancestors who are primates are ripping each other apart. A chimp comes up and they rip the chimp limb from limb. What human beings have done is evolved to be better when we are. When we war, we are not better, but we know our better nature and our better self doesn't do that.
Are we fighting against... I remember hearing someone on the podcast tell me that across cultures, men and women typically go for the same thing. So like men are going for a certain hip ratio, whatever, and women are going for a certain like shoulder ratio. Are these things not like fundamentally evolutionary?
It's status symbols. Like my husband's shorter than me. It's a status.
And status is an evolutionary desire.
It is, but we can be better than that, can't we? Can't we teach our girls and boys and non-binary young people that these are not these super...
Was not a moderator for a discussion or debate. He was an anti-feminist guy here to push anti-feminist policy. He was too cowardly to fight his battle himself, so he enrolled 2 women to do the fighting for him, hiding behind a facade of neutrality of being the moderator. He did absolutely nothing but threw a grenade every chance he could in an effort to sway the conversation, to push the narrative that he wanted to push. I think that in a world that is increasingly hostile to women, forcing a dead woman, for example, to have a child, this man is online peddling ideas that women have too much freedom. I think this is dangerous and it should be called out. Using other women, using women to make the degenerate points he did not want to make himself is important. Women as content, collaborators with anti-women women to drag other women and drag feminism is diabolical work. This man is, Stephen, trafficking in Manosphere rhetoric, making it palatable for larger public consumption. The part that annoys me is that he's pretending to not be Manosphere. It's Manosphere light. It's more digestible for the general public. When he's anti-feminist and pushing anti-feminist rhetoric in the form of question, it's harder to pick up on and it's harder to push back against. I know this audience. If you're watching me, generally you can already see it. I don't have to tell you. But now, in this political climate, this is not the time to be playing around with your rights. It is not the time to shift the conversation to make it more palatable to be anti-feminist and anti-woman and anti-women's autonomy. It is not the time to make that socially acceptable, because the political power that these anti-women men have in the American government in particular is going to be wielded against you. Make it very difficult for them to do what they want and implement it socially, even if they do have the political will and power. If your rights are going to be taken, don't just give it up willingly. Do not create a culture, even online, where the rhetoric seems to be that women are okay with their rights being stripped from them. Fight like hell to keep your rights, so that the people who are trying to strip them from you have to fight like hell to strip them away. Everyone understands that freedom comes at a cost, and you have to be willing to pay the price for that freedom. Okay, wait. I'm not going to end it like that. I'm not going to end it like that because that sounds so dreadful and doom and gloom. And I do want it to be a warning, but that just felt wrong. Love, light, peace, we stand together. I don't know how to end it without being dark. It is too late. I said what I said. It is a download and it does feel dark and gloomy. So I am giving dark and gloomy. I'm so sorry. Remember to like, share, comment, and subscribe. And I will see you again later in my next video, that is. Bye. Oh, yes, I go live on Fridays at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I might take a couple days, Fridays off during the summer because I'll be traveling, but that's generally when I go live. If you want to discuss anything that I say, please feel free, and I am still up for that debate. If there are any anti-feminist people in the chat saying feminism went too far, feminism is bad, we need more traditionalism, if you are here and you can hear my voice, I am requesting the debate. We will debate. I would love to debate you. Just let me know. I will be searching the comment section for you so we can do a live debate. I'll set it up. All right. For real now. Have a good one. Bye.